Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk. Today, we are speaking with Maggie Enterrios, and we are going to be chatting about her and what she does and about some, well, not some projects, a exciting project involving a new book. So hello, Maggie.
Hello.
Well, Maggie, let's start at the beginning. How did you get started as an artist? Did you go to school for art? Have you been doing art your whole life? Tell me a little bit about you.
Yep, I'm a solid lifer. I've always been into it. It's all I've ever been interested in. And I knew from a very young age this was going to be the path for me. I never even considered anything different. And I did go to art school in Chicago, and I got a job towards the beginning of my senior year of college. I got a job in the tech industry as like a very, very low level graphic designer, like just kind of weaseled in there. And due to the nature of the tech industry and kind of like the ability for amazing and strange quick growth, I worked at that company for almost 5 years and became an art director and learned everything I knew kind of like in the field. So even though I went to art school, I would say that most of my learning came from kind of learning how graphic design worked.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm sure that was fairly in depth. There's a lot of understanding when it comes to all the different kinds of things you have to do and all the behind the scenes kind of stuff that goes along with it.
Yeah, it's like a different language.
Exactly. So considering for your illustrations in your books, most of us have seen your book Flowerscape. Considering how accurate your illustrations are for different florals, you even have them kind of sectioned out, which I love because then you can even just do a small study on just one flower. When it comes to the accuracy of those, because they're so recognizable, did you have to study a lot of different flowers or like take a lot of like of your own reference pictures, or like how did you get your inspiration for doing all of those florals?
Yeah, I'm the worst person to take walks with because I stop like every few feet just to take reference photos. But yeah, I mean, there's a ton of botanical study involved, like without a doubt. I usually budget like 10 to 15 hours on any project. The coloring book was way more, but on an average project, I budget 10 to 15 hours just because I know I'll be doing botanical research. And I would equate it to like cramming for a test. So I get a ton of information about whatever specific botanicals I'm using, bust out the project, and then probably a week later, I have forgotten it all. It takes, I would say it takes like six, 7, 8 times drawing the same flower over the course of many projects for me to actually be able to like identify it in the wild. Like I kind of have to have the repeat exposure. So Flowerscape was pretty incredible. It was so much research, so overwhelming. And thank goodness that I had the flower identification pages, because by the end of the book, by the time I was editing the final book, and my publisher came to me and they said, okay, we really want like a left-hand side that has flower identification on it. Can you go through and just list out everything that you drew? And I was like, no, I don't remember. So I spent weeks Googling like 7-petaled flower and just like hoping I could, like I had to go back in time and try to fill in the spaces. So my next book, I was very proactive and kept meticulous notes, and it was much easier.
Absolutely. Those are things you learn from. That was going to be my next one, is like, did that make it so much easier in creating this next one?
Yeah, it did. And also, so the next book is tropical themed, which was something that I felt really, really excited about doing. And I had a backlog of reference photos in my phone from trips. My family is from Hawaii, and
that's awesome.
Years past of, beautiful orchids and like tons of just gorgeous reference photography that I was so eager to use. And the iPhone now has a built-in flower identification.
Yes.
Just in photos.
It's so nice. I've used it myself and it's just like,
It changed my life, because I could look at a photo that I took like 6 years ago and just swipe up and it would tell me the exact kind of orchid it was.
That's amazing. Yeah, we utilized that with the kids. We went for a walk and we were concerned about a plant because it looked really similar to poison oak. I was able to take a picture of it, tap it, and be like, oh, no, we're good.
Amazing. It's really changed the game.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, obviously you're putting a lot of work into these. Do you find that there is a certain time of day that you work better? Some people are morning people. I work at night better because there's less interruptions. What works for you?
Yeah, I've pivoted in recent years. I used to be extremely structured. I also came from a really intense 9 to 5 life. So that's what I thought that I had to stick to once I started working for myself, which was 6 years ago. And so I used to stick to that same schedule, and I just realized like that's not how I operate. So I typically take the first half of the day for me, coffee, exercise, play with my dog, just like I would say a very chill first half of the day. And then I just sort of crank from about noon to maybe 10 o'clock on a regular night, little break for dinner. And that seems to be the best for me. It keeps like every day I feel like I have lived life in the morning before I have to get to work.
Oh, absolutely. I'm exactly the same way. I like to take the time for my coffee, really savor
Yeah.
it, kind of plan on my morning. And it's like, okay, now I'll get stuff done. Is there anything in particular that you like to, are you a person that likes to listen to something, whether it's music or podcasts, or do you like watch a show that you're super familiar with and have it on the background, or do you need like complete silence?
No, I am the opposite of silence. I absorb so much media. I have an ongoing list at all times of every show, book, podcast that someone has recommended to me, along with like the person's name who recommended it. And I just move down it. And then I, have to report back to the person who recommended it to make sure that they know that I loved it or had some questions. But I do all of them. So I'd say I think I'm on my 24th book of the year.
Oh, wow.
And I'm also, I'm so many shows deep, like probably more than 24. And then tons of
really
podcasts.
Count the shows. I think I'd be embarrassed if I counted the shows.
I don't want to count the shows. I don't want to count the shows. Yesterday, I watched the whole season of The Summer I Turned Pretty, which is like a YA. It's based on a YA book that one of my friends recommended. And it was so cute. It was just like teen romance. And so I was drawing these flowers while I was like crying because I was getting her heart broken. It's a very visceral artistic experience. And then sometimes it's murder podcasts. Like it really it crosses genres.
It
You never
happens.
know.
I did like a full 2 months of listening to a lot of Brandon Sanderson's book, but I like a lot of like fantasy series. So they were really good. Like, I don't think I could have picked them up if it wasn't Audible because they're really thick and really intimidating, but I was like, I can work and listen at the same time.
Do you like Neil Gaiman?
I've heard of him. Yeah, I haven't listened to any of his stuff.
One of the best audiobooks I've read. I mean, it's definitely like in the fantasy genre. One of the best books of his that I read recently was The Graveyard Book, and it's a full cast production Audible book. So all the characters are different actors. It was fantastic. I'm
writing that one down.
Yeah. So that one was cool. And I was working on like a Halloween piece while I was listening to it. It was great.
Really went hand in hand. Spooky with spooky.
Yeah.
Well, for those of you that follow Maggie on Instagram, you have seen her post about so many different projects she has been working on. Do you have a favorite project that you've worked on in the past year? You keep posting, and I'm just like, holy heck, how can her projects get any more amazing?
Yeah, no, it's been wild. I won't lie to you. I'm quite tired.
Are you allowed to pick a favorite one?
Oh yeah. Yeah, you can pick a favorite kid too, right?
Theoretically. I have a favorite cat. Does that count?
Oh yeah. My favorite one recently, I'm not gonna lie. Flowerscape, the second Flowerscape book is really good, but I did this really cool project at the beginning of this year that was a shopping mall in England, and it was 100 yards of botanical illustrations, so like the size of a football field, floor to ceiling, like outdoor billboards, and it's insane.
Is that the We Can Do More installation?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the one I was going to mention. Like, it's just like, how was that seeing your work like displayed so prominently, knowing people are going to be walking past it, that it's like literally larger than life?
It's insane. Like there's a panda bear in the layout, and I'm pretty sure the panda, it ended up being like life size. Like it's just massive. And I love seeing when people put up like selfies and stuff in front of it, because it's such a cool backdrop, and it is huge.
Oh, absolutely.
It's bigger than I thought it was going to be.
Like, is it just like surreal? Like, do you have those moments kind of like there's times where like if I've succeeded at doing something that I didn't ever think that I'd be able to do, like it still just seems so surreal and almost like, no way, there's no way that I did something like this. Like, do you ever kind of have
Absolutely.
that step back and just like in awe of yourself kind of moment?
Yeah,
Not
all the
like
time.
a conceited way, but more of a like, holy heck, like I've
No, I
actually
mean,
done something.
I'd say sometimes it is kind of conceited because sometimes like I'll finish a project really late at night. Like I'll pull like a 1 a.m.er to get some, or I'm like so in the zone that I
Yeah.
can't stop. And then I'll fall asleep and then I wake up in the morning and I open my computer or my iPad or whatever. And I go, you're kidding me. Like, this is so good. How did I do this? And then I'm like, I mean, I work by myself. So I'm like, no one,
I just want to show someone, and
no one's
especially
here,
if it's
here.
yeah, if it's a project you can't talk about or you can't share yet, it's just killing you because it's just like I want to show everybody what I just made, but I can't. So I'm just gonna show my pet. Look at this,
I
and then they
know.
just like, all right, that's cool.
I know. And I'm like very, I'm a very nerdy artist. I am very into techniques and
Oh yeah.
like practicing new styles. But what I would call new is probably something that is like barely detectable to the human eye. And so I'll like think that I just came up with this revolutionary. I'm like, the line work is no longer black, it's off black. And I'm like, wow, like I changed the world. And it's so nerdy. So
No,
sometimes
I love
I'll
it.
look
I
at the
mean,
work the next day and be like, this is it. This is magic. I have created a masterpiece.
it's kind of like if I'm ever talking to anyone about like paper or pencils or whatever else,
Mhm.
if they're not in it, then they look at me like it's just paper. It's I'm like, no, you don't understand. This one
Yeah.
has tooth. This one has weight. This one is matte. This one is gloss. Gloss isn't going to work.
I was casually trying to explain soft touch paper to someone the other day, which is like when you get like a mailer from like an expensive mailer from
Yeah,
like some
yeah,
advertising thing. And it's kind of like, it's got that like weird little
yeah.
plush kind of feeling. And the person was staring at me like, there's nothing I would rather like, I'm so not into this conversation. I'm like trying to describe the texture of the paper. Oh my God.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
The
Like
weird,
there's
lonely art world.
I know, right? And like, and the thing of it is the community is so big online. But unless you are literally like going to school or you work at a company where you have other artistic employees, like it's you think even more difficult if you're self-employed because the people around you, you're hard pressed to
Yeah,
find people that love what you love as much as you love it. And so
totally.
it's just like, all right, well, just understand this is cool. I need more, you know.
I totally get that. I hired a freelancer to write some code for me for Photoshop to do some of my file prep. So I like can just press a button and it does all like a bunch of file prep that would normally take me hours.
Oh yeah.
And the coder's name was Brian. And I've never met him in person, like hired him online. And for just days, weeks, to whoever was listening, I was trying to tell them about Brian and this code that he wrote me. And and no one cared. And so then I ended up just writing Brian a really long thank you note to tell him like how he had changed my life.
I bet he loved that though. Like it's like one of the
did.
like coding is his art, and to know that somebody appreciated it to the level that he appreciates it is just,
He did
it's
tell me
great.
that he was so excited that I was excited. And he
No.
wrote back, he was like, I was at my kid's baseball game when you sent that note. And it made me so happy to know that I had made you Brian and I are in love now. I can't explain
It's kindred spirits. That's what it is. It's exactly what it is. Well, you talked about studying different styles of drawing and art and everything. Is there a particular artist or a particular, like, I guess, genre? Is there something specific that in like kind of I guess inspires your artwork or kind of points you in the direction you want to go?
I think earlier in my artistic journey, super inspired by like Art Deco and Art Nouveau art, just the maximalist aesthetic. Klimt is my favorite artist of all time.
Yeah.
It's just like it opened my eyes. Like the first time I ever saw one of Klimt's pieces, I was like, you're kidding. You can just keep cramming in details at
Like, how do you even do that?
to infinity? Like, that's so cool. And so I definitely tried to emulate that early on. A lot of my like drawings from college are just straight ripoffs of his work. That's like how you learn.
Exactly.
And obviously over time it meshed and melded in different ways. And I'm still constantly exploring. And when I look at work that I did, 5-10 years ago, it blows my mind to think, well, what's my work going to look like 5 to 10 years from now?
Oh,
I have no
absolutely.
clue. I have no clue. I'm just kind of along for the ride. I'm just nerding out the whole way, trying to figure out what it's going to look like. But that's what's great about art, right? It's just like
Oh,
constantly
absolutely.
evolving. I just started using color a couple of years ago. Like I
I
was like
saw
black and white.
when you started making that change, like you're like, okay, this is cool. I like it.
Yeah, years ago, I just thought I was going to be a black and white artist. Like
Yeah.
that was what I was into. And now like I'm using neon colors, baby.
I love
Whole
neon.
new world.
I get that because like I started doing all of the kind of illustrating and coloring back in 2015, and I've done art my entire life. I went to school for it and everything. So this past weekend I was painting, and it's been a while since I've done any kind of like fine art painting, but I've been coloring, I've been drawing, and I've been learning a lot about colors and shading and all of that. And I realized that I was approaching my painting in a different way now because of all of the things that I've learned here. So it's like using all of that, and now it's just like, oh, I'm better at this. Okay, this isn't too bad.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Most of what I learned about color came from painting, which I
yeah.
started doing like maybe 4 years ago. I just started painting.
Very cool.
And I was like, oh, I guess I do understand. Like I enjoy working with color. I'm starting to understand how it works. And then I started using it in my digital work. So it definitely took that like tactile medium to push me into even like creating more dynamic digital work.
Oh, absolutely. So you've tried the painting. Is there any other kind of mediums that you have gotten into that you do as like a hobby, or is it mostly just the painting and the drawing?
All of my here's the thing. I love every creative thing I've ever done in my life. Yes. I have a closet full of, rug tufting supplies, and just like all of you.
Yeah.
Just like all of us. I'm like, I wake up one day, I'm like, I think I want to get into beading earrings.
Right.
I want to do everything. But at this point, I kind of have decided that every hobby I have has to be an outside hobby, because I don't need another indoor creative hobby. Like I really just can't. I can't afford it.
Okay, that one's fair. I know I've got like my hands in like polymer clay, diamond art, crochet, sewing. I'm making that quilt right with your fabric that came out earlier. Well, I found more than just that one bolt. There were like two of them like squirreled away and hidden. And I was just like, yes, because the one I was looking for was kind of a more, because the rest of it was really detailed, and I wanted slightly less detailed accent pieces. And so it was the darker black one with the tiny little blue leaves. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like perfect. So I chose a solid color for the back, and now I just got to cut it out and put it together. But again, so many activities. I only have so much time.
There's only so much time. And it's like, maybe I should just take a walk once in a while, maybe just experience sunshine occasionally, just to switch things up a little bit. But no, I'm very into different creative outlets. I'm always finding things to do. I love cooking. I love, I like creating things. I can't help it.
Exactly. It's our nature. We just want to create, and that's what we enjoy.
Yeah. I want to create. I want to not clean up the project I was doing. And then I want to just start on the next project.
Yes. Can I just hire someone to just like put away pencils for me and reorganize my books? Like that would be
that's what we got married for.
There we go.
Gosh.
Oh man. Well, I mean, so we do lots of different kinds of projects, but one of the main ones you've really been pushing out is your coloring books. But when it comes to your first book, Flowerscape, how did you get into publishing that in the first place? Did you approach a publishing company? Did they approach you? How was that process?
Yeah, so they approached me. So I had published 2 books in the past that, to be frank, were kind of they didn't do very well.
Wait a minute. Can we find those books anywhere?
Yes, one of them is out of print. They're on Amazon. You just have to look up. But they're 2 guided journals, but they were very niche. So one of them was all about like foraging, and it really takes a certain person to want a foraging journal. And then I also think most foragers probably aren't buying new foraging books. Like they probably have a system they like already, and it's probably not like buying a mass market foraging book. Just sort of ill planned. So I was a little skeptical about the publishing industry in general, because the first 2 books kind of broke my heart.
Yeah.
I wanted them to do well, and they just didn't. So when this new publisher reached out to me, Page Street, I think I was a little bit of a brat on my first call. I was like, okay, yep, another book. Like, and then I talked to the owner of the company, Will, who was so kind. And he said, listen, I want you to create the book you want to create. I'm not going to tell you what to create. I'm not going to give you a weird topic. Like, I want you
That's
to create the book you
cool.
want to create. And he was like, what is the book you want to create? And I was like, first phone call. I was like, I don't know. You're the ones that called me. And so we were sitting there and I was like, well, I want to do a coloring book. And he was like, okay, we'll do a coloring book.
That's awesome.
And I was like, okay. And then I kind of hung up the phone. I was like, I think I just agreed to do a coloring book. Like I picked up the phone without knowing that the phone call was going to end that way. So that was in I think that was in 2018, 19.
Yeah.
And
that was pretty quick turnaround time then. You must have really pushed that one out.
Well, yeah, I cranked on that one. And I spent the first few months of 2020 actually illustrating. So it must have been 2019. And I spent the first few months of 2020 illustrating the first book. And then it did really well. Like, we're all really happy with the way it went. And I feel a little more positive towards the book publishing experience.
Oh, absolutely.
I was such a skeptic going in.
Yeah.
It just felt like such a big market. Like, there's so many things out there.
Oh, absolutely.
I just didn't know if I could cut through, but I feel really, really lucky. And the first book seems to be very well loved. So heavily appreciative.
Well, you said you spent the first couple months of 2020 illustrating. So how long did your first book take you from start to finish?
It took 3 months, like day to day.
My
but
word.
that was also, I think I started in March 2020. So all of my other
you had a lot of spare time.
all of my other projects dried up. No, like every project I was working on just, ghosted, didn't write back. So I actually had like 90 days straight to work on it. And when it came to book 2, I thought, okay, no problem. I'll have it done in 3 months, just like the first time. We've been trying to do this call since like January. It did not take 3 months. By 3 months, I think I had like 8 pages done. I was like, oh no. So I think in total it ended up taking 5 months, the second book, but I was doing it.
Because you just wrapped it up, didn't you?
Yeah, like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, maybe.
All right. And for those of you who are wondering, this new book it is coming out in March 2023.
That's what we're thinking.
Okay.
A good shift, but so far so good. That's what it looks like.
The full title is going to be Flowerscape in Paradise, a tropical coloring book. I love that. It's so like, it's just, I'm imagining lots of like bright colors, and it's going to feel like a breath of fresh air a little bit.
It is really pretty. Like I think for the sake of transparency, it's like the first book I was learning how to make a coloring book.
Yeah.
And with the second book, I was like, this is now me saying what I want to say. This is like, I understand the process.
Exactly.
I have gotten feedback from colorists. I've asked you questions. I've asked other colorists questions. Like, I'll just drop into DMs and be like, how do we feel about those tiny, tiny flowers? Like, we like them. Like, I've been getting feedback. I've seen which pages people like to color and what it is about those pages that they like to color. And that everything's kind of helped form the second book. And it is beautiful. I love her. Oh, she's so good.
Well, and that's the wonderful thing about this community, is that everybody is so open and willing to share. And so if you legitimately are like, hey guys, I'm trying to figure something out, like generally you can get some pretty decent feedback. And I mean, you've shown me some of these pictures here and they're absolutely gorgeous. Like, I love, there's that turtle one. It's so pretty. I think everyone is just going to love this so much. So for those of you that are curious, I am going to be putting the link in the description below to where you can go and pre-order Maggie's book over on Amazon.
And I have some sneak peeks on the Flowerscape Instagram page, because I've been sharing the whole like book creation process. So there's some pretty good sneak peeks on color Flowerscape. on Instagram.
That's good. All right. Well, and you guys are watching me actually color one of the new pages that Maggie has generously offered for a download for you. So if you want a chance to color one of the pages from her new book, check out the link. All the information is below. When you were putting the book together, did you have, I guess, versus, I don't know if it changed at all from first book to second book, but did you get to have a choice on like the paper or the binding? Did you have particular color pencils in mind? Kind of what was your thought process with that?
So the first book was definitely publisher driven. And I mean, the paper was like, all I said was, this better be good paper.
That's fair. I would want like good paper too.
But I didn't really get any samples to look through, which I would have loved. But then I ended up saying it has to be lay flat binding, non-negotiable.
Yes.
Must be lay flat. And so they were able to do that, which was fantastic. So for book 2, when we were discussing doing it, I said, can we just do the exact same thing as book 1? And then I toyed around with some paper changes, but ultimately it was just it would have pushed the cost of the book up higher. And I want the book to be an accessible price point. So like those conversations are absolutely being had. Like I've had the opportunity to weigh in more on the second book, but ultimately a lot of it was making the decision between, okay, well, do we want different paper and thereby like less pages at a more expensive price point? No. I was like, I want the same pages, same lay flat binding, same quality. Like I want the same printer to print it. Like just keep
like
it all
we
the same.
know it works. The ink was good. Nothing was smearing. The paper was good. It was
I mean, I have like future dreams. Like at some point I would love to put out like a watercolor version of maybe like select pages.
Like an artist edition.
Exactly. Yes. So I guess I just need the second one to do well because I already know what the third one's going to be.
Ooh, are we allowed to know what the third one's going to be?
I haven't even told them yet. I'm going to pitch them. I'm probably going to pitch them like by the end of the month because I have every single page plotted out for it.
Oh, that's amazing.
I finished Flowerscape in Paradise, like closed my laptop, and then I was on a walk with my husband and I was like, no, I just came up with a great idea. And he's like, no, he's like, absolutely not. We spent the last 5 months working on this book. Like, no. And I was like, oh, we have to go back to the house. I have to write stuff down. And I just made a giant Google Doc and it's got the third book.
That's amazing. That's got to get them excited to know also that you have such a drive and you're so excited by everything. Like
I just know it. I'll tell you after the call. I'll get your feelings on it. I just can't stop. Like it really, I couldn't even take a day off of Flowerscape. I was just ready to hit the ground running on the next one. But I'm hoping that if I pitch it to the publisher sooner than later, then maybe I can have like a longer deadline.
Oh, absolutely. And I love your idea with an artist edition because they're like some of the things that appealed to us in the community for artist editions. So 2 of them that I have pretty much tried out to the taken them, I've done water, I've done marker, I've done everything to them. Rachel Reinert had a couple artist editions, I believe. And then of course, Johanna Basford had her artist editions. And the common theme of things that people really enjoyed about them were A, the pages were removable. B, the illustrations were printed larger. And C, it was on a much heavier cardstock so that it could hold, alcohol markers or watercolor, and they're single-sided. Like I think some of them had tiny little illustrations on the back, like your individual flowers, like that could work on the back. Yeah. So I think an artist edition would be amazing. I think people would be really excited about it. It's
been really interesting just getting feedback like that because I know with book 1, the pages that I was most excited about creating are like the 2-page tapestry ones. But then I realized like most people aren't tackling these. It's just not the reality of the situation.
I like the idea of like the 2-page ones. And if I can sit down and do them, that's great. But for me, for instance, when I live stream, I tend to choose ones that are a little bit smaller, ones where I can get the most done in a stream possible.
Absolutely.
And so like, I think on their own, I think the biggest I've ever done was a 4-page spread in Lost Ocean. But that took me ages. So you really have to have the drive to like sit down and really like you love everything about this page and just be like, I'm going to finish this start to finish. Absolutely. Or it ends up in, the pile of work in progresses that you've had for like 3 years. Not that I have.
Well, we all have them. I think all the time about how it takes me I don't know, 5 to 10 hours to do a page, not counting botanical research. And then I kind of am like, okay, but it's going to take a colorist like 4 times as long.
Yes.
So I was trying to be very conscientious of like, how do I create pages that feel like they are tackleable? Like I want, especially like on the new book, I wanted in my mind, you know, you get the book, you open it up, and the first page, you're like, yes, I want to color that today. And then you turn the page, and you go, no, I want to color this one today. Like I didn't want there to be that moment where you opened it and you were like, either, don't love this one, or like, oh, this is awesome, but when am I going to find the time? Like I wanted you to be able to just dive in, randomly open the book, love it, want to dive in immediately, feel like you can finish it. It feels accessible.
Exactly.
You can make it more of a challenge like you do. You know, you can add like really interesting dynamic shading in unexpected ways,
or you can just fill in the spaces. And that's what I tell a lot of people, because they will get like overwhelmed by like, well, how can I make this look like so-and-so's artwork, or they're adding so much to it. And I like, the bottom line is it's all about, you know, enjoying yourself and having fun. And like, if you're doing it to the point where you're not having fun, then you need to approach it differently. And if it's just a matter of grabbing a random pencil and filling in the space, then that is perfect. And that's what works for you. There is no hard or fast rule that says, oh, by the way, this needs to be, you know, Picasso level masterpiece, you know? But I mean, you think about a lot of those, you know, famous painters from way back when, they weren't famous when they were alive, and they pretty much thought all of their stuff was terrible. So, you know, we're all our own worst critics. And so the best thing to remember is just have fun with it. And as long as you're having fun, it doesn't matter how they turn out.
Yeah. And I always want there to be just like a low barrier to entry. Like nothing should feel overwhelming.
Exactly.
Nothing should feel like I don't want anyone to feel like less than as they color something. So I just tried to create moments within the pages where it's like, okay, there's a geometric background, but hey, you can leave it uncolored just as a black and white geometric background.
Exactly.
Color like the center motif, and it looks like a finished piece of art. And then if you are somebody who's like totally extra, you're like, I'm going to turn that into a stained glass background. Like it's just really adaptable, I guess, to like whatever somebody's into, however many hours they have, where their mindset is that day, where their emotional bandwidth is. Like it's just
exactly. Because I remember you made that post at one point about how, and it was when shortly after Flowerscape came out, that like, even if you're not into color, you showed them how they could utilize their, you know, just regular black pens and just add their own details, and boom, it's a finished page. You know, add some extra lines, fill in some spaces, add some dots, and there you go.
Yeah. And because I'm a doodler through and through, I cannot have a piece of paper and a pen near me without doodling on it. Oh yeah. And I also, you know, to create a coloring book, the line work is simplified from what I usually do. Yeah. So in simplifying it, once I had the hard copy in my hands, it was like, I wonder what this will look like if I add back in ink details in the way I would typically draw. And then I was just so into how that ended up looking. And I thought, oh, this is actually like a great resource for people that are into drawing, maybe not as into coloring, or like the idea of practicing shading in different ways. So, you know.
Yeah, exactly. No,
I coloring book.
Right. See, but this is great. Like, you know, that we both love this stuff so much. Like this interview could probably go on for hours of us just talking back and forth about like art stuff. Like it's just, Well, with all of the pages you've created, you know, whether or not it's from the new book or from Flowerscape, do you have a favorite page that you think of when you think of, you know, whatever, like, yes, this one was my, you know, either was the most fun to create or you love the final product? Do you have a favorite one?
That's a good question. So from the first book, there is a, here, let me actually just pull it up. The 2-page spread that is like the pansies, or sorry, I didn't mean 2-page, I meant 2-column. If I can find it. And it was the first page that I created. There we go.
I'm looking too. I'm flipping through also.
This guy.
Oh, that one. Yes, that one's great.
Yeah. And when I looked at it, like as I finished it, when I looked at it, I just thought there was something unique about like the way it was framed and how it was like partially, it like breaks the frame in some areas and then is contained within the frame in others. And as I was thinking about book 2, I was like, oh, I want to like emulate that in several more ways. Yeah. So having a piece that appears to be a finished piece of art, even as line work, and then allows you to play with borders in interesting ways.
Exactly.
So that page I just love, because to me, like when I close my eyes and think about the book, like that's the first page that I see in my mind. And then it also was instrumental in tackling the aesthetic of how book 2 would appear. So it just felt like a important one.
There is a woman, her name is actually Maggie, also Maggie Cook. She is a colorist, and what she likes to do for Johanna's books is she will have 2 copies of it, and one page she will dismantle, and the other page she'll put it back together, and she always makes these kind of 3D pages.
Cool.
Really cool. But yeah, like she would probably love doing something like that with that, because it just feels like it pops up being, like you said, contained on one side, but then breaking the frame on the other.
Yeah.
So with your pages that you've created, I know that you do a lot of your stuff digitally. Do you ever sketch things out beforehand with just paper and pen, or did you, always kind of do it manually, or at what point did you switch to digitally?
Yeah, I sketch everything by hand all the time. That's how I process information. That's how I come up with ideas. So I'll start with like a list of botanicals, like I've actually either handwritten or typed. And then I'll sort of frame out what I want the art to look like on a piece of paper with a pencil. Even if I never reference it again, I just I have to draw the little rectangle.
It helps to form it in your mind.
Yep. And and for the new book, I mean, I blocked out like 46 rectangles on a big piece of paper. And just as I had an idea, I would run over and kind of just do like the loosest little sketch. And then I ended up making a digital copy of that one so that I could just reference it like immediately. So as I was drawing on my iPad, I would, import my little baby sketch of the page, which they're just hilarious. Because I'm also a terrible sketcher. Like it honestly, it's like turtle and like circle, 2 little stripes done, and like future me knows what I meant to do. And so then I can reference that and kind of remember maybe what I intended on doing on that page. And then like making sure on this new book, I was really making sure that the book flow felt very intentional. So like, a good mix of like, a heavy detail page, but then after that is a little bit of a breather, and my animal pages are spaced fairly evenly across the book. And so I was able to like move the little thumbnails around and
see, that's perfect. I love that. Well, since you do kind of sketch, do you kind of use just like whatever pencils you have around, or do you have like a favorite pencil or pen or a sketchbook or anything?
I like a pink gel pen or a pink felt tip marker. Don't know why. I think it's like the elementary school me is like, it must be pink. And
absolutely.
it feels far more exciting than a black pen.
Oh yeah. Honestly, the more sparkles and like glitter and gel pens I have on a page for like little details, the better.
I love those little, the little like micro felt tip, super saturated pens. I don't even know what brand they are.
The Stedler.
Yes. Yes.
Yep, I got whole drawers of them here.
I steal those from anyone who ever dares to hand one to me. Like, my friends handed me a lavender one to like write something the other day, and I was like, I will be taking this. And she was like,
just so you know.
Figured you would. It's like, yes, lavender might be the new pink for me. But I collect so many writing instruments, like far more than I need. So I just try to make sure I, use them so none of them feel left out.
Yeah, exactly.
So occasionally I'll dig to the bottom of the Sharpie bag and just make sure that nothing's feeling too neglected down there.
You're like, I'll use you today.
Yep.
Small little puce pen that I have.
No, I even used a red pen recently, which I would never usually do, but I was like, poor little baby, never gets any action. I'll give you a day.
Oh my gosh. Well, you've been doing this for quite a while. What'd you say? You've been working for yourself for about 6 years, you said? But
yeah, so I've been illustrating professionally for a decade, but I, quit my job and made the leap 6 years ago.
You've learned a lot on your way. And I know you and I have spoke on this before, and you have the post on your website that's about licensing and everything. And I know for me, especially after having talked with you about it, because we've discussed like pricing things for me, because I'm like, I don't know where to start for different things, but our conversations have really helped me to kind of value my work and where it should be at versus the fear of, pricing too high or too low versus being bought versus not bought, or getting the job versus not, kind of thing. And so, you've learned a lot of stuff along your way, and you were so generous to share in that post. And for those of you watching, I will put the link to that post if it's something that you're interested in. But for any illustrator that is kind of getting out there to start, they need to understand licensing and branding, and how to work with them. For anyone that is beginning, do you have any like top 3 tips that you've learned that are like, these are the things that you absolutely should know if you want to get into illustrating or get into, putting your work out there?
Yeah, I mean, the first tip would just be the subject of licensing.
Yes.
And understanding that. And I could talk about this for forever, and I have talked about this for forever. You can find plenty of media on me discussing licensing, or like in the post that you just referenced. But I will give you a brief overview, which is basically, as a creator of artwork, you own a personal copyright to whatever you create. You don't need to like go register it, for copyright. Like, you could, you don't have to. If you created it with your own 2 hands, it is your copyright. And in that, somebody that wants to use your artwork for commercial purposes, they basically have the ability to borrow your artwork to use it. If somebody is coming to you for commercial purposes and wants to buy your artwork and own it, like, that is very different and should be very, very expensive.
Yes.
But they may use it, and that is what we call licensing. So you can license your artwork for something like a limited amount of time, or a limited amount of products, or, only in Ohio.
Yeah.
You have the ability as the artist to choose how you want your art used, and you have the right to be compensated fairly for it.
Yeah.
So much of my work is licensing artwork for use on different products. So if I create something like I have this drawing of 2 leopards that I did in 2016 that I have relicensed for use on wine glasses, on restaurant menus, not as a fabric yet, but they are part of that large scale installation that I was talking about earlier. Like, these leopards have found their way around the world, and I get paid every single time somebody wants to use them.
Yeah.
Which means that, I receive then dividends on the artwork that I own and that I allow people to use.
Yeah.
So reading up on licensing is very important, because that, to me, is truly how you make money as an artist.
Absolutely.
Because, it's not like you just created something once, someone bought it, and now there you go. Yeah. You sold your one.
That's it.
Like, the ability to continue earning on something you create is a really incredible part of being an artist, and it's absolutely worth reading into. And then my other, I guess, 2 pieces of advice are, when you are valuing yourself as an artist, when you're figuring out like, oh, what's my hourly rate? The way I tend to think about things is, pick an hourly rate. It could be $50. It could be $150. Whatever it is to you, it's actually not that big of a deal. Like, choose something that feels right for what you are doing. And then I would say, base your entire life on your hourly rate. So if you are feeling overwhelmed and you want to take a walk, say to yourself, is this walk worth me like leaving my computer, leaving my work? Is it worth $100 of my life? And most of the time it probably is. And I would say that when you're thinking of other projects, think of it the same way. So if somebody comes to you and the project looks really difficult, and they want to pay you what comes out to, $5 an hour or something to do that. Like, think to yourself, if I'm working on this for 20 hours for like no money, is that worth the emotional equivalent of $800 or of $100 an hour to me over time? So like, yeah, you might do it. You might want to do the project because you might want the exposure. You might like think it's a good stepping stone. It might not be the price you want, but if you're like stoked on it and to you, it's like worth that, then take it. Sorry, that was a very long way of basically saying value your time, but don't be a prisoner to it.
Absolutely.
Like, allow yourself to see time and value in different ways, depending on different projects.
Absolutely.
And then number 3 is just have fun, create the work that you want to see, create the work you want to get hired to do. Never do a project if it doesn't feel like it's going to personally move you forward in your art career.
Yeah. I like that.
Okay, that second one was really convoluted. I'll explain
No,
it
but you
more
know
in
what?
cleaner detail later.
No, it's perfect because I think a lot of us, because I mean, I kind of feel like I'm at that age, not age, stage. I'm kind of at that stage where I do feel like I'm almost starting out. So it's that fine line between valuing yourself, but also like what's more important here? Are you willing to give a little bit on here to get a little bit
Right.
here? And where's the most important part? And I
Yeah.
think that's where a lot of us stumble because I mean, I don't know, you see a lot of those reels and TikToks going around about, this is why I charge this much for my artwork
Yeah.
because of the work it took me to get here. You don't question when Louis Vuitton charges you, $3,000 for a wallet. Why,
Absolutely.
you might
Yeah.
not be ready to charge $3,000 for, a picture on a sticky note, but you need to value yourself, and that, just because somebody doesn't value it, that doesn't mean that somebody
Right.
won't value it at that.
Yeah. And
you
I
need to
mean,
find those people that value you.
yeah. And I think it's okay to be too expensive for somebody. But I also think, contrary to what some other people might say, it's also okay to do like work for free sometimes.
Oh,
If
absolutely.
it really is important to you. And if
Yeah.
you truly do, like, I'm not talking like getting bullied into it by a client who tells you like, a lot of people will see this. That's like, yes. But if you personally find that the project is just like salivating enough to you, like people will tell you like never do that. And I completely disagree because some of the projects that I made the biggest compromises on price wise, I then was able in return to ask for like autonomy. So somebody might say, hey, we want you to do this thing for well below your normal fee. I want to do it so badly because it seems like something that is going to truly push me, be a challenge in an interesting way. And so instead I'm able to say, okay, well, that is below my usual fee. What if in return you get no edits and I get to say what happens?
Yeah.
And like that is working for free, but it's also allowing you to create something that is very impactful for your portfolio.
Oh, absolutely. And kind of take control of the situation and be able to be like, all right, let's, we're going to do this. This is the way that I want to do it. And I don't want to compromise. I'm feeling.
And I think that nuance is something that is not often discussed because I think we are often told, absolutely do not do anything for below your fee.
Yeah.
I kind of disagree. I think that there are ways to make things work for you because we're all just in it to portfolio build and to like, gain clientele and show off what we can do.
Credibility and all of that, if
you have the opportunity to do that and still like hold on to, your soul.
Exactly.
Good.
Well, that's awesome. Well, that's about all the questions that I have for you today. For those of you watching, don't forget you'll have that download below for you to color. And you can use the hashtag Flowerscape in Paradise. I'll include any other information you need in the description below. Maggie, thank you so much for joining us today and for taking the time to answer our questions.
Thanks for listening to my rambling.
Anytime. All right. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
I'll see you on the stream at some point.
Yes, absolutely.
I'll just jump in.